Welcome to the Chaos and Light podcast. I am your host, Angela Levesque, and on today's episode, I'm speaking with Carrie Kohan. She is a Métis psychic and international best-selling author of The 5 Lessons of Life, which tells the story of her 2 near-death experiences. And we'll get to that in just a moment. As my listeners know, the Chaos and Light podcast is part of the Chaos and Light community, which is an online space for spiritual seekers to connect and expand with other like-minded people. So if you haven't been there for a while, please go to chaosandlight.com for more information on upcoming events, guided meditations. We have new articles and videos that we put out almost every week. So it's a great resource if you're interested into anything surrounding consciousness expansion or spirituality. Yes, well, when I return, we will speak with Carrie Kohan. Do you believe in synchronicity and synergy? That when people share, connect, and collaborate from an authentic space, amazing things can and do happen? Then check out the Chaos and Light community, an online space for spiritual seekers that supports personal growth and gives you a frequent touch point to stay connected to your spiritual core. Join a group, attend a gathering, be inspired by our Muse feed, all in a politics-free, ad-free environment. So dive deep into your spirituality at chaosandlight.com. Connect, inspire, expand. All right. Well, I'm here today with Carrie Kohan. She is an author, speaker, facilitator of The 5 Lessons of Life, which is a life-changing book about her 2 near-death experiences. When Carrie returned from her second death, she became a coach and business partner of Tony Robbins in the early 90s. And in 1995, Carrie's family was the second in Canada to bring the cellular industry to the Supreme Court over safety concerns of electromagnetic frequencies. She went on to write her first book on Fauci and his reclassification of AIDS, and then became the first voice in Canada to speak about child sexual abuse. And as a government witness, Carrie has amended and written 14 laws to protect children from predators. Today, she speaks about encounters with ETs, the end of the Mayan Calendar, and is working on her next 3 books. Well, Carrie, welcome to the Chaos and Light podcast.
Goodness. That is an intro, isn't it?
It is very diverse.
Yeah, we're almost out of time already. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a life. I've often joked that, in my lifetime, it feels like I've had 8 to 10 lifetimes. The experiences that I've done could easily fill up like 10 lifetimes already. But I think that this is the last kick at the cat for me here, for many of us, actually. And so it feels like time is of the essence, even though time is an illusion. But it just feels like we've got so much to do and there's so much to accomplish. And yet at the same time, it's like chill, and just be, right? And so it's the world of contrast where you are, let's go, 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 go. And then the rest of you goes, wait a minute, let's just relax and meditate and will, through our free will, the beauty that we have around us and just appreciate it. So it's been a journey, my girl.
And as I said to you in one of our correspondences, that there would be so many directions that I could take this interview. And actually, I've had other programs where I would have really liked to go into some of the more activist things. Yes. But since this is more based around spirituality, I want to start with your 2 near-death experiences. So if you could kind of give us a brief understanding or some background with those.
Well, I died twice in 1992 and 1993. And the first death was quite interesting. I had an abortion and I was beating myself up brutally because it was a brutal abortion. I became sterile from it, so I thought anyways. And it was just a lot of guilt surrounding it. And so, I started to drink, and I drank profusely. And being native from Canada, alcohol and me didn't really mix too well. So I ended up choking on my own vomit, and I died. I slipped out of my body, and I came face to face with those gremlins that had been at my feet for a very long time. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see a pair of eyes, and I would feel these really dark critters coming up around my feet, around the bed, through the floorboards. I would hear them scratching. I would hear them hissing. It was really terrifying for a very long time. But when I had the out-of-body experience where I actually came up and out of my body and was dead, I was hovering over my body, that's when I realized, oh my goodness, it wasn't just bad dreams. It wasn't just a nightmare. Those things actually were alive. And so I came face to face with what we would know as the devil. And my first thought, I laugh about this sometimes now that it's done and over with, but my first thought was, oh my God, he's handsome. Like, I understand where they get the devilishly handsome saying from, because he was, the chiseled jaw and dare I say, like, he was actually really handsome. But then his eyes, it was so putrid, and reptilian eyes, and they would undulate. And he was just creepy crawly. So anyways, I was an atheist back then, and I really didn't have any time for any kind of belief systems like that. Even though being Métis, being Aboriginal, I was Cree, Ojibwe, my mom had a bit of Huron in her, French, we were French as well, so we were Métis. And even though, I was brought up open to all religions, I just had lost faith in any kind of religion. And so I knew I had abilities. I was very psychic, even as a little one. I would have premonitions and dreams, and that continues to today. But I had lost faith that there was something really beautiful out there, because I think I had lost faith in myself having that abortion, right? Mm-hmm. And so there I was, face to face with the devil. And I realized at that moment, oh my gosh, if he exists in this form, then there has to be a counterbalance. There has to be a good. And so almost intuitively, instinctively, I called in God and Jesus to be by my side. And I had never thought of Jesus ever. That wasn't even in my radar. But for some reason, I literally went, God and Jesus, be by my side now. And they showed up, to my surprise. They actually showed up. And so I watched the darkness, literally, his eyes just bugged out at the sight of them. And he flew through the glass, and he was gone. And so I had the opportunity to speak with Creator just briefly there. And I asked why the devil had been there. And he said he sensed that he could have your soul. And you had beaten yourself up so brutally. You had lost your light, right? And in doing so, you opened up to this darkness that he felt that he could actually have your soul. And that's what he was doing, is collecting souls, right? And so that's what he thought he could do. But luckily, I was able to call in the light. And so there was a few things that happened after that. Long story, but I've written about it in the book. It's beautiful. But then if you fast forward a full year later, I died a second time. And by now, I had turned my life around. I had quit drinking. I was living in Vancouver, in Kitsilano, and I lived in a hippy-dippy house. It was a beautiful house with like 11 to 22 other people. It fluctuated. And the people that came into the house were real visionaries. Like Eckhart Tolle was a young man. He used to come over and sit at our kitchen table, and we'd, have dinner together. And and actually he was really quiet back then. He listened more than anything. And the conversations that we had back then were very cutting edge, we'll say. A lot of dream work. Can you imagine 11 or 22 of us, depending who was around the dinner table that evening? My former was Eric Edmeades, who is the founder of WildFit. I don't know if you know of Eric yet, but he's actually starting to really be well known as well. And you know, we all sat around this dinner table and we'd have the most interesting conversations that were about quantum physics in the time where no one really knew what quantum physics was, right? And so that was really beautiful. And at that time, I died again. I had a heart attack, and I've had heart attacks all my life, right? And so I slipped out of my body again, and this time I was lifted up. A beautiful big brown bird came in, and it was massive, and he lifted me up. I say he, but you know what? I go back and forth. It actually felt like a he, but then there's moments when they're a very tender, feminine bird as well. Anyways, it lifted me up, brought me into the light, and into what we would know as heaven, and it put me down on. It was like a chair that was made out of clouds. It was extraordinary. And it was warm, and the love would just kind of bubble up through the seat. It would just fill you up, all this beautiful love. And so I ended up meeting with Creator there and the Council of Men. And I had never heard of the Council of Men before, not on the radar whatsoever. But they were extraordinary. I had seen a couple of them in dreams before, with the robes and the sashes, you know, the golden sashes, and I had seen them as monks as well. You know, the 3 monks that used to come to me in dreams, and I realized that they were part of that Council of Men. So all of the wisdom was starting to be shared with me. We had conversations about everything from suicidal spirits, right? People that commit suicide, what happens to them. It made me realize that I would never, ever, ever consider suicide in my life, because what happens is you go up. Some go to like a gray void, which what we, I think, would be calling hell. And it's like a murky soup where you just are suspended in time, in air, it felt like. And I could view it, right? I could see others in it. And like faces would come up, and grotesque faces that would scare the bejesus out of them. And it was just fear-based is what it felt like in that gray void. Some suicidal people, and even non-suicidal people that have really beaten themselves up, end up in that gray void for a period of time until they get enough confidence, enough gumption to move beyond that and go into the light. And then other suicidal spirits go straight to the light. But what happens is when you go to the light, you have a reprieve, you do your life review, which is really lovely. I got to do that myself, and it's eye-opening. A lot of use of holograms was quite enlightening back in 1993. I'd never seen a hologram before back then, never really heard of them, frankly. And it was a 9D hologram. I don't know what that meant, but that's what I was told. So anyways, the suicidal souls, they go up there, they have the reprieve, they see their life review, and then they come back and they start their life all over again in a parallel dimension. And again, in 1993, we didn't know what a parallel dimension was, you know, I mean, majority of people didn't. And so it was a really mind-blowing concept back then. Now we're kind of going, oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Right. But back then I was like tight-lipped when I came back for a long time. I wrote it down in my journals, thank God. And so that was kept, right. But, you know, yeah, parallel dimensions and suicidal souls and endless loops. So that's what I saw, was that you come back and you're given another chance as such to start your life all over again. Same parents, same place, doing the same thing. That's what deja vus are about, is that you're replaying the same life all over again. Like you have that feeling like, wow, I've been here before. Yeah, you're darn right. You've been here before. You've done this over and over and over. It's been an endless loop until you get to that point where you had committed suicide, or, you know, you begged for an early exit and you had a car accident and you left, or you asked for a heart attack like me at 27, right? I really just wanted to be out of the world in many respects. And so they took me out, right? But whatever it is, you can have like exit strategy is what they called it. So you can have that or a suicide. So if you're a suicidal soul, you would come back, you would relive your life all the way to the point where you had committed suicide. And either you're going to get over that hump and you're going to live your life like, woohoo, I did it, I got past it, or you're going to continually do the exit. You're going to commit suicide again and again and again. So it's very much like Groundhog Day, the movie Groundhog Day, right? With, what's his name, Murray, where you just live the same life over and over and over again. And I think that's actually what my life was like. I look at this book and I think it's a microcosm for what's going on today, because we're in an endless loop. We are in a 5,000 year endless loop. It's a 5,000 year cycle. And I don't think we've ever gotten to this point before. We've had, wars, we've had atomic bombs, we've had the cabal take over, we've had all kinds of different things, but we've never made it to this point of accomplishment, I believe. And so that's why I'm really optimistic of where we're going, because I think we are transcending. I think we are lifting up to a whole new vibration. And so just like in the microcosm where a suicidal soul has to learn to get over that pain and trust that we're on the right path and that there's so much more life to live right now. And if you change and shift your thoughts, you're really going to have an extraordinary life moving forward, right? So that's where we're at right now, is that suicidal point.
Well, I want to talk more about the macrocosm and moving forward, but I want to come back a bit to this comment that you made, both when you were talking about heaven and hell, saying what we would call hell and what would we call heaven.
Right.
What do you feel like, what do we get right about that concept and what do we get wrong?
Oh, wow. Great question. So I saw it and was told that it was the gray void and the white void, and there's also a black void. And the black void I thought would be hell, but actually the black void is where all illusion begins. And Raven is the gatekeeper of the black void in our culture, right? In the Cree culture, we believe that Raven is the gatekeeper. And the black void is where you can manifest anything from there. So that's what the black void actually is. The gray void is what we would know as hell. It's like an entrapment, and you have to will yourself out of there through faith, trust, forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of everyone else. You have to let go of your anger. You have to let go of the fear. And then you can start to lift up and out of that and go into the white void, which we know as heaven. So what we get right and wrong, is there a right and wrong? Really, that's, here in this world, yes, there is a right and wrong because it's a world of contrast. And I really believe that this is an experiment as such. We are here to see, and not even see, it's more to experience love on a scale of desiring love above all else. And when we put love as a priority for one another and for ourselves, especially for ourselves, to love thyself, love thyself, love thyself. When you do that, magic happens. And that's when you can change everything around you. When you let go of fear, that's really moving out of hell and going towards heaven. I'll add one more thing to this. When my oldest daughter was about, 8 or 10 years old, she came running into the kitchen and she goes, "Mom, where is hell?" And I was like, "Where is hell?" She goes, "Yeah, what is it? Like, where would it be?" And I thought, oh boy, what do I say to that? And so the kids have gotten to know me over the years that if I don't know the answer, I don't BS my way through it. I'll actually say, "Hold that thought for a second, honey. I'm just going to check inside. I'm just going to look inside and ask." And so I closed my eyes and I actually went inside and I said, "Okay, Lord, what do I say?" And immediately the answer came. It was just downloaded. And I opened my eyes and I said, "Honey, hell is anywhere that is void of love. Any place that is void of love, that is hell." And she was like, wow, that's interesting. And so, 8 years old, that's interesting. She was very precocious. And so she started walking out the door, and I heard this next sentence, and I spoke it out loud, and I said, and if you don't believe me, put the word love backwards and sound it out. And what do you get? Because love backwards is evil, right? Evil. And so it is anywhere that is absent of love is hell. And it can be hell on earth as well as hell in what we would know as the great void, or what I know as the great void.
And you describe the experience of the life review as quite beautiful. So I think one of my questions that I was really asking is about heaven and hell. Is it some other being determines whether you did well or you did terrible, and you go to the gray void or the white void, and you see this review, and there's sort of a judgment day, the way that maybe it's talked about in Catholicism,
Right.
or but that's not how you
not
would
at
think.
all.
Okay.
Nope, not at all. I would say the judgment is up to you. And the less you judge, the better off you are. Right? So the moment that you let go of judgment of yourself, it's all good. When I went up and met with Creator, my first thought was, oh, no, oh no, I've had an abortion. I'm going to hell. And I literally had that thought, and they could hear my thought, and their kindness and warmth. I had Jesus beside me to my left. God was in front of me, and the Council of Men were later on beside him, but also behind him. And they were just so loving and so, I don't want to say a parent-child relationship, but at times I felt like that, because I felt like their love and capacity for love was so grand and so great that I was learning, right? I was in the learning mode there in that situation. And what I realized was there was no judgment about me having an abortion. That was something that was man-made, right, to control. And but having said that about abortion, like long-term, late-term abortion, that's a whole nother issue, and everything that we go through here, every single experience that we decide upon, you do have to weigh your decisions yourself when you're there. And I think the hell can be the endless loop, right? Because if you go through your life review and you realize that you didn't get to the end of the finish line going, woohoo, I feel fantastic. I did a great job. I didn't let fear bound me. I was a really good person. I treated others how I wanted to be treated myself. It's like the 10 Commandments, right? If you follow those 10 basic rules, I think that you could get to the end of your time and feel very confident about yourself. Then you would actually move on to perhaps another level of consciousness, another ascension, and not have to come back and repeat the whole thing over again, hoping that, okay, this time I'm going to remember to do better. Right? But having said all that, it's complex, because had I not had the abortion, I wouldn't have drank, and I wouldn't have, had all the experiences that I had. And thank God that I had that abortion, because if you read the book, you find out in the end how beautiful of a gift everything was, right? There is a greater plan. God has a greater plan. It's my feeling. There's no accidents in any of this, including what we're going through right now.
So after having those two very profound experiences, how did that change your day-to-day life? Everything changed for me from that point forward. I didn't tell many people other than my fiance. I told him pretty much everything. And then my journals. I'd been journaling since I was 12, so everything went into the journals. But I just opened up differently. I treated myself
100% better. I would look in the mirror and really love the reflection that I saw looking back. Prior to that, I didn't. And I could have been the most beautiful woman on the planet, but I only saw ugliness before. And then when I came back, it was like, wow, I came to a place of forgiving the people around me and forgiving myself, most importantly, forgiving myself, for having anger towards some and a lot of people, and I just let go of all of that and started living life totally different. And life just opened up after that. I ended up working with Tony Robbins. We were franchise owners of his in Vancouver. So back in the 90s, 1111 Melville Street was our office, 1111, right? And, there were just so many serendipitous indications all around us. It was really interesting. Yeah. That's a cat that is meowing outside. It sounds like it's in pain. It wants attention. We're in Portugal right now, and we have some wild cats that live around us. So, yeah, that was interesting.
So
anyways, yeah.
Having these experiences, and clearly you've spoken about creator and God and the angelic realms. How do the aliens fit into all of this bigger plan?
Well, that was interesting. I saw it twice, actually. When I was in the white void and I was speaking with the Council of Men. At what point was it now? I know that, it was when you can speak. Before we come here, we sit down with like a spiritual counselor and we decide what lessons we want to learn, what we want to be like, what our physicality is going to be, the vibration of our name, everything, who our parents are going to be. But you also decide what planet, what galaxy, what dimension, where you're going to be placed, where you're going to go to learn from, because it's all a learning experience, right? And so we could have chosen to go to XYZ planet. We could have chosen to go into another galaxy, another place, and looked very different. We could have been like an amoeba, in some other place, and looked very sexy as an amoeba somewhere, some other place. But we chose to come here. And so I understand that, the ETs as such, I don't call them aliens because I believe that we're all aliens. We are aliens here on this planet. Humans have been brought here, I believe. And so I've had experiences with aliens on this plane since coming back. I've met a man that was in my life for about a year, maybe two. And he ended up being what we would know as a lizard person, but he actually was a very good lizard person. There are some good ones. And so being in this world of contrast of good and bad, up and down, in and out, we have some that are good and some that are not so good. And same with humans, right? So that's a way off. That's a whole nother subject. It gets a little crazy. But that leads to the end of the Mayan calendar. And maybe we can come back another time and talk about all that. That would be really interesting. But as far as, how ETs are here, we could have been ETs from a different planet just as easily as we were here, so it was a choice to come here and be part of this greater experiment. And it is a great experiment.
So to kind of bring the conversation back around, you talked about the macrocosm and that we are really in this position right now where we get to decide, maybe you decide if we're ready to expand and move to, kind of the next phase of our evolution. And I believe stepping into more of our true potential. So how do you see this time? And you said that you're optimistic, which makes me very happy. And how do we move beyond kind of the places that we're stuck?
Well, fear is the greatest thing that's keeping us stuck. And so like a heavy coat, we literally have to lift that coat up and off our shoulders and let fear slide down our back and go into the ground, into the earth. And we know that, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed or transmuted. So allow that energy to leave you and go into the earth, and allow Mother Nature to transform that energy into flowers and trees and everything beautiful. Let it go. Let go of the worry. I had a client today, and she was really, really so wrapped up in worry that it was manifesting physically, not only on herself, but family members. And, I simply did an exercise with her where I bring people down their timeline where they can actually look back. It's like a life review where we look back on your timeline and you get to make a decision for yourself. The way that I'm living right now, is it serving me best as I move forward in my timeline? And so that was her, we had to look at the timeline, and she realized the worrying is praying for the negative, and we don't want to do that anymore. So the best way to transcend or to move to a higher state of consciousness is to let go of the fear. Fear is toxic. And it is it's the easiest way to manipulate and control humans. And, the moment that you let go of fear, you're not able to be controlled anymore, because you're in a position of love and joy and trust and faith and compassion and everything good, right? So that's where we're at. I think we need to move beyond. If we're going to move up in a higher vibration, if we're going to shed our skin as such and move into a new metamorphosis, like the butterfly, if we're to transform into a higher state of consciousness, we have to let go of fear and the lower vibration energies. I wanted to share, as I was talking there, I had a memory. And one of the things, you have to be careful what you ask for, right? Yeah. And so a couple of days ago, I was thinking, okay, when I was 4 years old, I was telepathic. I actually had a conversation with a girlfriend, and I ended up meeting her like 30 years later, or 40 years later. And I was 4 and she was 8 years old, and she was in Norway. I was in northern Quebec on the spy station for the Russians, right? And I used to go and lay on the grass and just look up at the sky. And I think I was so lonely because no one really understood me. I was such a different kid, right? Very psychic, out of body experiences, all that sort of stuff. And I really wished I could meet someone that understood me. And it was at that moment I heard a little girl's voice, and we used to talk. And so just recently I was thinking, I'd like to be telepathic again. And the one thing about telepathy is you can't have any secrets, right? Mm-hmm. In order to be telepathic, you have to be so open that you can be, so open, right? And you can both receive and allow others to come into your mind and your heart. And so I can't believe I'm admitting this, but so I had filled out a government form. It's making me choke up. Isn't that funny? I filled out a government form in Canada, and I was asking for that $2,000, fee, because at the time, this is a long time ago, at the time I was just, our business was folding, and we were having a really difficult time financially when COVID first hit. And so I filled out that form. Well, I was here in Portugal, and you have to be in Canada to fill it out. And oops. So I filled it out because I was desperate. It was at that moment, right? And Revenue Canada came back and phoned me. They came back and they phoned me. And I remember, I'm getting red in the face just thinking about it, because I was like, what did I do? Right. And then, so I woke up the next morning and, thinking, oh my God, Revenue Canada's phoning me. And they're after me because I filled out a form. and so I thought about it, and I heard creators say, you wanted to be telepathic again. And in order to be telepathic, you can have no secrets. So the secret had to be exposed. And so it was exposed. You had to face whatever secret you had. And I was like, oh, wow, there you go. So that was like, something that I would have held inside going, I really shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have filled out that form. I should have been honest. And so that goes back to that endless loop, right? Making the decisions. And yeah.
So I have met a few other people who have had near-death experiences, and that was sort of the catalyst for their abilities to awaken. But it sounds like you came into this life with some pretty awakened abilities. Did
Big
your
time.
near-death experiences, did they change them or heighten them in any way?
I would say heighten them, because I really came back trusting 100%. Prior, I would hear voices, I would see things. I had some pretty interesting experiences, like, standing on a street corner. I put it out there that I really wanted to hear from my angels. I hadn't heard from angels in a very long time, and I really wanted to have a conversation with angels again. So I'm standing on the street corner of Robson Street and in Vancouver, and the light was just turning green, and I was about to cross, and I actually felt like something pull me back, and a voice said, Carrie, get back now. And it said, see that brown van? It's going to go through the light. And sure enough, I just had enough time to look to my right, and this van came bulldozing through, ran the light, would have knocked me out. Like, I would have been gone. And so, I've had a lot of really neat experiences, but coming back, I 100% trusted whatever voice I heard as being here for my best and highest good. I knew the distinction. The discernment was very easy when I came back. There was no like, I don't know, is that the devil? Is that, I don't even like to say, is that the devil? But is that more dark energy? And it's like, no, I know what dark energy is now. And I certainly know what light energy is now. So it gave me the strength to trust 1,000%. And in that, I think that's why I've been so successful as an advocate, because I was considered illiterate, right? I was in the dummy class in grade 8, and I failed grade 12. And I faked my way through school reading. I would go to my classrooms early. A lot of kids would hang out the classrooms first thing in the morning before school would start. And if we had to do a live book report, as we stood up in front of the classroom and had to give our opinion on this book that I had never read, I used to go to school early and talk to people and say, well, what did you think about it? Well, what was your favorite part? Blah, blah, blah. And I'd hope and pray that I was not the first person, because all these people are giving the same report, and so you can kind of clue in after a few reports, and you can take a bit from that one, and then also the interview in the morning. So that's what I would do. And how someone that is illiterate can come and amend 14 laws, write and amend 14 laws in Canada to protect children. It was 100% spirit-driven and given. It started off, actually, I was living in Calgary actually, we had a 3-time convicted pedophile after my daughter when she was 2, and he tried to come into our house and get her out of her crib. And I just happened to be cutting vegetables, and I had a very long, sharp knife in my hand, and I heard the floorboards creak behind me, and I turned around quickly, and sure enough, there was this big 6-foot guy, and I'm tiny, I'm like under 5 feet, right? And so I Mama Bear came out, I was like, who are you? What are you doing in my house? And I chased him out with the knife. And I soon learned he was 3-time convicted pedophile, and he was heading to the bedroom to get her. And so that was the start of the advocacy. I had visions of him coming 6 months prior. I've had premonitions all my life, including about COVID. I saw it in 2016. So anyways, I ended up being the voice. I waited for almost 2 years. Like, I started small town hall meetings and stuff, and got the media involved. But once he went into hiding and we couldn't find him again, that's when I had to go into hiding, because he was so dangerous. And so we had to end up, I brought my daughter across 3 provinces. We ended up hiding out in Manitoba for quite a few months, until we were able to get a court date to try and find him, to arrest him. And long story short, I realized very quickly he had more rights than we did as a family, because he was a warrant expiry, which meant that he had served his full sentences, right? And so they had no parole on him. They had no ability to go after him. So long story short, I started hearing voices and visions. A lot of visions came to me, and I saw myself on podiums and talking to thousands of people and saying, enough is enough. We have to do something and protect the children. We have to save these kids. And the visions were so persistent that finally I was like, okay, enough. I'll make you a deal. You've got to make it easy on me. You got to organize it, and bring it together with ease and grace, because I've been through too much. I don't want to, I had a bit of post-traumatic stress already, I believe, after 2 years of, death threats and being hunted by, not only that pedophile, but others. Yeah, because I was the first voice in Canada to actually speak up against pedophilia, and for children more specifically. And so, there were a lot of death threats. I had the Pedophile Liberation Party of Europe that was threatening to pipe bomb me and do all kinds of stuff, because they didn't want anyone to bring attention to what they were doing. And the pedophile rings were massive and so high-reaching. Like, I was exposing a premier of a province, all kinds of stuff, right? So anyways, long story short was that Spirit guided me the whole way. I listened, and it all came together with ease and grace. And in the end, the media ended up coining me the Erin Brockovich of Canada, because Erin Brockovich was the same. She had the same learning disability I did, troubles reading, yet she could reach in a filing cabinet and pull out the files that she needed. And I was the same. The night before, I would sit in Ottawa in front of the Justice Committee of Canada in Parliament, and with all lawyers and the police officers, and these were very high-ranking federal government witnesses, and I was one of them. And I was a stay-at-home mom, for goodness sakes, but I knew my stats. No one could beat me on stats. I would go to the computer and I'd pull out 2 files, and I would bring them with me to Ottawa. And sure enough, those were the 2 files that I needed to really make points and change people's minds that, this was an epidemic and we had to save the kids. So when I look at the near-death experience, at the end of my time in heaven, Creator kept saying to me, you've got to go back. You got too much to do. And I was like, no. He goes, no, you have to go back. Yeah. And I was like, no, I really want to stay here. And so they found a way to incentivize me to come back. They actually showed me my 2 children. And at that time, I thought I was sterile. Wow. I don't get emotional about this anymore, but my sister's passing right now. And so it's really, it's at the surface for me right now, because I'm the last sole survivor in our family. My mom, dad, brother, and now my sister, all gone. And so I was so grateful to have my girls, right? Because I didn't think I was going to be able to have them. So isn't it interesting that I get sent back, and the battles that I have, or that I'm guided towards speaking my truth about, are all really relevant to today. And more important, like the most important, I think, is to save the children. And you know, I brought in the sex offender registries, raised the age of consent from 14 to 16. I brought in the child internet protection law, minimum sentencing, Amber Alert with Heather Forsyth, MP or MLA Heather Forsyth. She and I brought in Amber Alert to Canada. Yeah. So a lot of major laws. They weren't just little things. I mean, these were coast to coast federal policies, all of them. And including, I always thought it was beautiful. A law was named after me, and it was called Carrie's Guardian Angel Law. And
really?
I didn't name it, right? It was MP Art Hanger, Member of Parliament Art Hanger. He was the chair of the Justice Committee of Canada, and he wanted to put in a minimum sentencing of 20 years for serial pedophiles. These were the worst of pedophiles, right? With hundreds of children that they had harmed. And it ended up getting voted down in the third reading by the Liberal Party. They came in, and we needed unanimous consent in order to move forward with it, because it was a private member's bill. And yeah, it didn't make it to be law. But I always thought it was beautiful because it was Carrie's guardian angel, right?
Yes,
Law.
That's a very nice honor. So we are almost up on our time here. I have one thing I need to ask you about.
Yes.
So you spoke about the Council of Men. Do you not think that there's a Council of Women?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question as well. So the Council of Men, when I came back, I actually, my second day back, I ended up at a bookstore, and I opened up the book to a page, and the title on it was the Council of Men. There was Betty Eadie's book, Embraced by the Light. And it was the first near-death experience I had ever heard of other than mine. And so mine was literally just days prior to opening this book, and there was a Council of Men. I was like, oh, there's a confirmation I've been looking for. So the Council of Women, it's on the angelic realm. What I felt was there is definitely a male and a feminine energy, right? Mm-hmm. And the feminine energy can be just as much of a warrioress as the male energy. But it's also a very tender, healing energy. And so what I saw was the Council of Women, perhaps. I don't know if there actually is a Council of Women. Is there? Yes or no? No, it's more the angelic realm. You know, the women, the feminine energy is just so beautiful. So when we pray, when we have any kind of sorrow or fear or whatever it may be, every single prayer is heard. I saw them as beams of light going up, and they could actually determine, you know, from the intensity of the light and the colors of the light, you know, which ones to really go for. Like you would see an army all of a sudden of angels that would just go towards one beam, and it was like such a desperate situation. But all of them are answered, each and every one. There is not one that was ever ignored. And a lot of that was from the feminine, and some male as well, you know, but a lot was feminine. It was beautiful, really beautiful to witness.
Yes, well, we could talk like 4 more interviews. There's so many good things, but I really, it's such a fascinating story. And I love that it kind of created a momentum in your life to take up these causes and to speak for people who maybe don't have a voice. And I think that that's really beautiful. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
It was my pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. And the book itself is called The 5 Lessons of Life. It's available now in 22 countries. It's been a #1 best-selling book for 2 years. It's self-published, no advertisement, no, other than the podcasts that I do every once in a while. But other than that, no advertisement. And yet the message is being shared from friend to friend to friend to friend, family member. And I think it's because the message is so profound and timely.
Do you have a website?
I do. It's Carrie Kohan, Carrie, like the movie. A terrible way to remember, but it works. And Kohan is KOHAN.com. And there you'll find free videos. I do meditation like you. I love your meditations, by the way. They're really
thank you.
beautiful. Yeah. And so I've got three free videos on there that are profound, basics of meditation, heart wall to smart wall, and your empaths, how to, it's a really profound exercise. If you're an empath, it's a must to, you need to go and experience that video, and it's free.
I will make sure that I put your link to your book as well as your website there for people who want to have that reference. So beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope we chat again.
I hope so really too.
Yeah. And enjoy Japan. How exciting.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you ever come to Portugal, we have a retreat center here. So, it's an artist retreat center for painters and writers. And you don't even have to be an artist, just if you want to be and meditate and experience. We're just minutes from the beach, and it's just a beautiful place. So
that sounds lovely.
Love to have you here.
Well, you have a good night. It's so funny. It's really early morning here for me and late at night for you. So
it is. Yeah. Well, have a great day, and we'll chat soon, I'm sure.
All right. Thank you. Are you enjoying this podcast and want to help this lady out? Well, share it with friends, or even better, leave a review on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you. Now back to the show. Well, that's it for today's episode. Coming up on the next one, I will have Dakota Earth Cloud Walker on. I'm so excited about this. I have recommended her guided journeys countless times on this program, as well as to basically anyone that will listen to me. So I'm excited to have her on in a couple of weeks. If you haven't checked out the Chaos and Light website, I suggest you do at chaosandlight.com, and do one of the guided meditations or check out any one of the articles on there. I think we've got a lot to offer. Well, that's it for the show today. Take care and seek the mystery.